In today's video, I'll share with you a quick hack that you can use to build more muscles, lose fat, and to gain strength with only 5 minutes per day. Yeah, that's right, 5 minutes per day. Have you always been working out the way that you've been asked to, but still aren't making any progress? So for someone who's been working out and who's been training people for the couple of years, I see 70% of all people doing most basic conventional workouts. And not to say that that doesn't work. When I see people doing more conventional style training, that is amazing and provides them with the basic principles of how to work out. But time and time again, you have to add something which is beyond the conventional training style to get your body in a state of shock. What happens when you give your body shock? It adapts to that stress and responds by becoming stronger and faster. So in today's video, I wanted to introduce you to a specific kind of training called the isometric training, which has been around for a couple of years, to be honest, and has been used in various disciplines such as martial arts like Kung Fu, Karate, and one of the main celebrities who used to endorse this kind of training was the late Bruce Lee. So to understand isometric training more, let's understand what kind of movements are there. So there are three kinds of movement. The first one is called concentric movement, which is the shortening of distance between yourself and the weight. Well, you can imagine doing a simple bicep curl. So the concentric part of the bicep curl is where you are lifting the weight and the weight is getting closer to your body. The second form is eccentric, or a decline in the amount of distance. So imagine yourself holding a bicep curl up at its peak and then slowly putting it down. That is eccentric, where you are lengthening the distance between yourself and the dumbbell. The third one is the one that we want to focus on today, which is called isometric. This is where you hold the weight on top. Let's take our example of bicep curl again. You hold the weight on top and keep squeezing. The mechanism of action here is that the weight doesn't move and there's no shortening or lengthening of the muscle, but you're just holding it up to a point and squeezing the muscle. And that's as simple as how it is. Now, we've taken an example of the bicep curl, but you can literally extend this into a push-up hold, a squat hold, or multiple other exercises where you're just holding the movement. So you must be thinking how adding 5 minutes of isometric training can help you out. Well, let's take a look at the reasons why. The first is that you gain muscle. When you look at sports scientists, they have all sorts of fancy equipment, and one of those equipments is called a digital tomography. And when they use this fancy piece of equipment to analyze large cross-sectional area of the muscle, they find out that isometric training puts more stress and tension on the muscle when compared to conventional training. Now, there's also a greater force production by the muscle, and just by holding and squeezing your muscle, you can increase the intramuscular pressure around the area that you're working out. So what does more intramuscular pressure do? Well, the more pressure that you have in your muscle, that means the oxygen levels in your muscles go down. And what would that lead to? A state of hypoxia, or where the oxygen goes low, that the muscle signals various protein filaments like myosin and actin to drive muscle growth. And that's how simply holding a movement can increase you gain muscle. The next one is fat loss. I was surprised to see a study published in the Journal of Applied Research where the subjects lost up to 22 pounds of weight in 4 weeks following an isometric training protocol. And the crazy part is that they were performing isometric training for 7 minutes per day. The subjects also had a decrease of 14% in cholesterol in those weeks. The next one is building strength. While some of us want to put on the muscle or look good without our t-shirts on the beach, I have seen a growing trend in the fitness and the wellness industry of men and women alike trying to increase their strength, because we have enough evidence now that says that when you increase your strength, that automatically pushes over to a lot of other biomarkers in the body. Now, building muscle is way different than building strength. When building muscle, I often recommend everyone to follow a periodization or a hypertrophy type of training. But when it comes to strength, there is only one way out. You have to lift the heavy stuff. And that isn't always easy because people not always can lift the heavy stuff. But let's look into some science and let me introduce you to the concept of physics called the force-velocity relationship curve, which tells us that how fast you move in one direction depends on how much force is applied. Now that sounds super simple, but let's look at it in a bench press, for example. Depending on how heavy the weight is on the bench press, which is the force, it will determine how many repetitions you do in a certain direction, which is the movement. So when you use conventional style of training in a bench press, that would require you to use a weight and keep moving it for reps. But because of the force relationship curve, you cannot lift so heavy. But when it comes to isometric training, because there is no movement involved, you're able to lift up a heavy weight on bench press and hold it there. The act of holding by itself will develop your strength and the amount of force that you generate. Due to there being no velocity or movement, the force generated by an isometric movement can be quite high, and that could increase your strength levels. It is so high that isometric training is able to recruit 100% of your contractile tissue, which is almost next to impossible when you're trying to do conventional styles of training. The next is reducing pain or injury. We all love to work out, and the number of workouts have been increasing over the past few years. Everyone wants to do their Spartan race and CrossFit competitions, but what no one will tell you about is the wear and tear that happens on your muscles. Now, that being said, these wear and tears can actually cause our body to age faster unless you do something about it. So let's explore this topic. We all know that most of the injuries that happen to our joints, tendons, or soft tissues are constantly because of the force that we're being exposed to. The next component of injuries is momentum or speed, or the way our muscles, ligaments, or joints stretch or lengthen. But when you do isometric training, there is no momentum or there is no muscle lengthening, and that's why it can help you out if you're injured or just recovering from an injury. The next one is it could save you from a boring cardio session. Now let's face it, right? Everyone hates running in the gym on a treadmill, and when we're running, surprisingly, the time goes super slow. So stay with me on this one because this gets interesting. What the isometric effect happens as soon as you squeeze your muscle, and the veins and the blood vessels that are running through them are also constricted, which automatically puts an effect on your cardiovascular system, which goes under a state of stress. What happens when you expose your body to stress? It mostly adapts to this new stress and becomes stronger and younger. The constriction automatically forces the heart to pump blood in a way that it couldn't before, and this increases blood flow. Studies have shown that doing isometric training 3 times per week can decrease systolic blood pressure by 12.5 points and diastolic blood pressure by 14.9 points. Now that shows a great improvement in the cardiovascular health. The next one, it's a time saver. Well, we have a fast-paced life with bullets firing out of the email and working on a deadline, and normally not everyone is able to hit the gym even 4 times a week. So you've got to find a solution that can help your body train as much as possible in the least amount of time. So let me introduce you to Charles Sherrington's law of irradiation, which says that every time a muscle exerts some kind of force, the nearby muscles are also activated, assisting in generating the power needed. When the force required is much higher, the muscles use other surrounding muscles, which are even distant muscles, to kind of help them out. So what does this mean for a normal person? Well, if you're doing your bicep curl and you're holding an isometric move, that means nearby muscles, which are as far as the hamstring or the calves, can also be activated. So isometric training essentially can save you enough time, because when you're using isometric training with any body part, all the other parts of your body will get activated as well. The next one is that it is great for athletic performance. Now, when we do a workout, or when athletes do a workout such as sprinting, jumping, or doing some kind of an explosive stuff, they normally target type 2 muscle fibers. These are fast twitch muscle fibers. But if you stick around and do conventional training, chances are you wouldn't even reach type 2 muscle fibers and mostly will be stuck in type 1 muscle fibers. But when you apply certain principles such as Hansen's size principle, we know that motor neurons and muscle fibers work together. And the more force output is required, the body can use different motor neurons in different fibers of the body, which automatically will skip the type 1 slow twitch muscle fibers, and you will directly get to the type 2 fast twitch muscle fibers, which can help with your athletic performance. Now, those were some of the benefits that you can get by adding isometric workouts to your training. I would recommend that you do isometric training for at least 5 minutes by the end of your workout, and this could be simple things like squat holds, isometric push-ups, or just putting your hands in prayer position and pushing them against each other. Or my favorite one, you can just push the wall as hard as you can. All of those things will develop your muscle force, muscle power, and muscle strength. And if you think this information was great, check out the other articles and videos that we have over at www.shiftwithcj.com. And if you found this valuable, share it with a friend. It's a great hack to have.